For years, Canada has leaned heavily on the Union through the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, and fast. With rising trade tensions and new U.S. tariffs adding unpredictability, Canada is taking decisive steps to diversify its trade strategy. Trade Minister Mary Ng's latest trip to Europe signaled a major shift, showing just how determined Canada is to reduce its reliance on the U.S. One of the biggest moves? Expanding trade with the European Union through the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA. Since this deal came into effect, Canada-EU trade has skyrocketed by over 65%, a significant win. But Canada isn't stopping there. During her visit, Minister Ng Asia as well. For decades, the U.S. not just reacting to short-term U.S. trade policy, tech industries, energy exports, expanding beyond the U.S. to diversify revenue streams, technology exports, strengthening Canada's role in AI, cybersecurity, and digital industries. This strategy isn't just about Europe. Canada is shifting its energy exports toward Asia as well. For decades, the U.S. purchased nearly all of Canada's oil, 97% to be exact. But now, with new agreements in place, Japan and China are stepping in as major buyers. At the same time, Canada is bolstering trade relationships with Indonesia, South Korea, and other Indo-Pacific nations. By strengthening ties through the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, Canada is ensuring long-term economic resilience, not just reacting to short-term U.S. trade policies. Mary Ng's trip to Brussels wasn't just about took full advantage of the trade deal, meaning trade strategy. The goal? Building stronger alliances and reducing dependence on any single country. While CETA has already been a success, there's still untapped potential. A shocking 43% of eligible Canadian exports to the EU aren't even using CETA's preferential treatment. In 2020, only 57% of eligible exports took full advantage of the trade deal, meaning many businesses are leaving money on the table simply because they aren't fully aware of how to leverage the agreement. Minister Ng is pushing to change that. She's prioritizing initiatives to help small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, navigate international trade. Since 98% of Canadian businesses are SMEs, removing trade barriers could be a game changer. To help businesses expand globally, Canada launched online store development, covering costs for digital marketing, a financial support initiative offering up to $75,000 per business to explore international markets. Since its launch in 2016, thousands of businesses have used this program to break into new markets. But it became especially critical during the COVID-19 pandemic, when companies needed digital solutions to survive. The program adapted by funding online store development, covering costs for digital marketing experts, sponsoring virtual trade show attendance, and helping businesses comply with new international trade regulations. The result? Canadian businesses gained the tools they needed to compete globally. Canada is taking bold steps to ensure its economy to expand internationally. And then there's a major focus has been fixing trade barriers at home and abroad. One key area: mutual recognition of professional qualifications between Canada and the EU. Soon, architects, engineers, and other professionals will have an easier time working across borders without dealing with excessive bureaucracy. A win for skilled workers looking to expand internationally. And then there's the big-ticket item, critical minerals. These resources power electric vehicles, wind turbines, and the green economy. Canada and the EU have been working to secure reliable supplies of these vital materials and avoid dependence on countries that don't share their values. Meanwhile, trade tensions with the US have reached. He falsely claimed that many Canadian disputes took a bizarre turn in late 2024 when, during a private dinner at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump suggested Canada become the 51st U.S. state. At first, it seemed like an offhand joke, but by December 10, 2024, Trump doubled down, posting on Truth Social Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. By December 18th, he falsely claimed that many Canadians supported the idea. Then came the economic threats. In early 2025, Trump ramped up rhetoric, but Trump escalated things further: Canadian imports, unless Canada agreed to changes. His argument: the US was subsidizing Canada, throwing out an unverified $300 billion figure. Trudeau fired back. On January 7, 2025, he declared, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States." But Trump escalated things further. On February 1st, 2025, he followed through on his threat: 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods, effective February 4th. The next day, Canada retaliated, imposing its own 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of American imports. But beyond tariffs, something much bigger was happening. One of the biggest reasons the United States cannot afford to on it. In 2023 alone, these exports were valued at $130, pumping out 4.6 million barrels per day as of 2023, with nearly 97% of those exports flowing directly to the U.S. Alberta's oil sands are the lifeline of this energy supply, and U.S. refineries, especially in the Midwest and Gulf Coast, are heavily dependent on it. In 2023 alone, crude oil exports generated $124 billion for the Canadian economy, making it one of the country's most valuable industries. Beyond oil, natural gas is another crucial resource. Canada, the world's fifth largest producer, extracts 17.9 billion cubic feet daily, and the vast majority flows south through a network of pipelines. These exports were valued at $113 billion in 2023, further cementing Canada's role as a primary energy supplier for the United States. This dependency extends beyond fossil fuels. Canada is also a global leader in critical minerals, which are essential for modern technology, including electric vehicle batteries, semiconductors, and aerospace manufacturing. Canada's position as a key supplier of critical material. Canada ranked as the fourth largest. Gold is just as valuable in the world. Canada produced over 7,000 batteries. In 2023, Canada produced nearly 59,000 tons of nickel, with over half of it exported to the United States. Other buyers included China, the Netherlands, and Japan, but the United States remains Canada's biggest customer. Aluminum is another critical material. Canada ranked as the fourth largest producer in 2022, with an output of 3 million metric tons, and the industry was valued at $16.5 billion in 2024. The difference between Canadian aluminum and that produced in other countries is that Canada's production is nearly carbon neutral, relying almost entirely on hydroelectric power instead of coal-based energy sources, making it one of the cleanest aluminum producers on the planet. Gold is just as valuable. In 2022, Canada mined over 205 tons of gold, ranking 5th worldwide. The majority was exported to financial hubs like the United Kingdom, Switzerland, and the United States, where it plays a critical role in investment markets and high-tech manufacturing. But perhaps one of Canada's most underrated advantages is uranium. With some of the richest uranium deposits in the world, Canada produced over 7,300 tons in 2022, accounting for 15% of the global market. The United States, Germany, and the United Kingdom are among its biggest buyers, as nuclear energy gains renewed importance in the transition away from fossil fuels. Another major pillar of Canada's economy is forestry. Lumber has long been a point of contention in trade disputes, 280 million hectares, making it one of the largest timber producers in the world. In 2022, the forestry sector contributed $33 billion to to Canada's GDP, with exports totaling $45.6 billion. The vast majority of this trade was with the United States, where softwood lumber has long been a point of contention in trade disputes. The lumber industry remains a hotspot for trade disagreements, particularly in ongoing disputes over United States tariffs on Canadian timber. However, despite repeated challenges, the United States construction and real estate sectors heavily rely on Canadian lumber, making it difficult to fully cut off imports. Trump's aggressive stance toward Canada's trade policy. The U.S. isn't comfortable with Canada reducing its economics. It was about controlling resources. The United States has long relied on Canada's vast reserves of oil, gas, minerals, and raw materials. But as Canada moves to diversify its trade partnerships, Washington sees it as a threat to U.S. economic and strategic interests. Trump's push for annexation rhetoric, whether serious or just political theater, sent a clear signal. The U.S. isn't comfortable with Canada reducing its economic dependence on its southern neighbor. But Canada wasn't backing down. Despite political tensions, Canada remains deeply in South Korea. Canada isn't retreating. It's doubling down on its trade barriers, particularly for small and medium partners are actively diversifying their economies to reduce American leverage over their markets. Canada is at the forefront of this shift, with CETA expanding trade with Europe, CPTPP strengthening ties with the Indo-Pacific, and new agreements with Japan and South Korea. Canada is making sure its economy is no longer tied to just one country. And it's not alone. Other close U.S. allies, including Japan, South Korea, and the European Union, are following a similar playbook. They're forging independent trade agreements with each other and developing economic strategies that lessen their reliance on U.S. policies. Despite rising tensions with the United States, Canada isn't retreating. It's doubling down on its trade diversification strategy. With new agreements expanding trade routes beyond North America, the government is focused on ensuring Canada remains a global economic powerhouse rather than a secondary player in U.S.-led trade policies. At the center of this shift is CETA, the trade agreement between Canada and the European Union. While the deal has already boosted trade by over 65%, the real potential lies in removing remaining trade barriers, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses. Canada and the EU are working to streamline trade dispute mechanisms to make cross-border transactions faster, simpler, and fairer. Why does this matter? Because SMEs account for 98% of Canadian businesses. Making it easier for them to sell internationally means more jobs, higher investments, and stronger economic resilience. Beyond Europe, Canada is forging deeper trade policies, including those of the United States. Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, has opened doors to high-growth economies like Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and Indonesia. These nations represent some of the fastest-growing consumer markets in the world. By deepening trade ties with them, Canada is ensuring that its economy is less vulnerable to any single country's trade policies, including those of the United States. At the same time, Canada is exploring bilateral trade agreements with key partners in Latin America. Ecuador, for instance, has emerged as an unexpected but strategic trade ally, particularly in sectors like agriculture, clean energy, and mining. The real issue driving U.S. frustration with Canada historically going to the United States. But nuclear energy and aerospace technology has massive reserves of oil, natural gas, critical minerals, and renewable energy. However, as Canada shifts towards selling these resources to new partners in Europe and Asia, Washington sees this as a threat to American economic security. Oil Canada produces 4.6 million barrels per day, with 97% historically going to the United States. But new deals with Japan, China, and South Korea are changing that balance. Natural gas. Canada's 17.9 billion cubic feet of daily production is a key energy source for the United States. But Canada's building new LNG export terminals aimed at Asia and Europe. Nickel, aluminum, and uranium. Canada is a top supplier of metals needed for electric vehicle batteries, nuclear energy, and aerospace technology. But not just for the United States. European and Asian buyers are increasing their stakes. This shift isn't just about trade, it's about economic independence. Canada is ensuring that its most valuable industries remain under Canadian control. While Donald Trump's trade war rhetoric has focused, for example, the U.S. auto sector reliance could end up hurting the U.S. just as much as Canada. By imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, the U.S. is risking higher prices for American consumers, particularly on energy, metals, and lumber. Supply chain disruptions in industries reliant on Canadian materials. Job losses in U.S. industries that depend on Canadian exports. For example, the U.S. auto sector relies heavily on Canadian aluminum and steel. If tariffs drive up costs, American-made cars will become significantly more expensive. Similarly, U.S. food production depends on Canadian potash for fertilizers. Tariffs on potash could lead to higher food prices for American families. Canada isn't the only country shifting away from manufacturing. Is expanding trade with China and relied heavily on American markets are now diversifying their trade agreements to avoid economic dependence on Washington's policies. Japan and South Korea are strengthening trade ties with Europe and Southeast Asia. The European Union is reducing dependence on U.S. energy and technology supplies. Even Mexico, traditionally tied to U.S. manufacturing, is expanding trade with China and South America. What started as a U.S. strategy to control global trade has triggered a worldwide effort to create new economic partnerships. The U.S. is losing influence over its allies, caused by unilateral American policies. U.S. protectionist policies have created unintended consequences. Allies that were once firmly within Washington's trade network are now looking elsewhere. Canada's strategy of diversification isn't an anomaly. It's a reflection of a broader global trend. Countries are making sure that they're not overly reliant on U.S. markets, protecting themselves from economic uncertainty caused by unilateral American policies. The future of trade between Canada, the U.S., and the rest of the world is shifting. The question now is, will the U.S. adapt to the new global trade landscape, or will it be left behind? What do you think about this shift in U.S.-Canada trade? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.